Number 1. So this happened with me 2 years back. I was trying to switch to a new job and had an interview scheduled. The place was far away from where I stay, and I had to change 2 trains to finally reach the destination. I was wearing my pantsuit and my favourite silver hoop earrings. I had changed one train and was waiting at the station for the next one. It was a very hot day in the afternoon, and the place was not crowded. There were hardly 10 people in that area. Being an observer, I slowly looked around at the people, and it was then that I saw this woman standing on the stairs, far from me. There was something off about her. She was very short and stout, carrying a huge purse. She was looking right at me. She looked very happy for some reason and was grinning at me like she knew me. It felt awkward, so I looked away, but I could feel her eyes on me. After a few minutes, I turned around and saw that she was walking towards me. She was limping and still smiling. I definitely did not know her. She was walking very fast towards me, and just when I decided to put more distance between her and I, she screamed,
"Hey! I love your earrings! Can I have them?"
I was shocked. I did not even know this woman, and she was asking me for my earrings. After I got a grip on myself, I kindly told her that I had somewhere to be, and would need my earrings as they go with my dress. The expression on her face went from happy to murderous in 2 seconds. And then she started talking a bit louder.
No, give me the earrings. I have to go for an interview and I want them.
This was getting weird because I was on my way to an interview too. I felt a bit angry too, and firmly told her that she was not going to get my earrings, and if she wanted them, she can buy her own. She looked like she was going to cry and was breathing very heavily. I stepped away from her. I was almost running and I could hear her coming after me. I dared look back and saw her limping towards me as fast as she could. I was so scared. Luckily the train came, and I got on as fast as possible. The station got crowded as many people got off the train, and I could not see the woman. I quickly scanned the compartment and was relieved not to see the woman there. I instinctively checked on my earrings, and they were still there. I made it to the interview without any strange encounters, but the interview was cancelled, and going there was a complete waste of time. I was damn scared to go back to the station, but this time there was no strange woman smiling at me. Never saw her again, and don't want to see her again.
Number 2.
This story is partly mine and partly my wife's. It all happened about 6 years ago, when we were both in our mid to late 20s. I was 27 and she was 25. Her and a few friends had been to see a play a few hours' drive away. I had been supposed to go with them, but unfortunately I had to work late as I was working a very important project and needed to finish a time-sensitive report and presentation on some very complicated environmental and sustainability issues to present to a committee the following week. This was a Friday night, and my meeting was Monday morning. They were on their way back from the performance. 3 women, all the same age, and the theatre was fairly remote, so their drive was through a lot of very wooded, secluded areas. Well, anyway, they were probably a little over halfway through their journey home, when suddenly my wife, who was in the rear passenger seat, heard a very loud bang and the car began to slide across the road. Emily, who was driving, managed to control the slide and bring the car to a stop half off the road. Emily had said it felt like a tire had blown, which is odd. She said she had replaced the full set of tires on the car a week previously. But these things do happen, and she said she would take it up with her garage the next morning. My wife says that at this point she felt a very strange, uneasy feeling about the whole situation, but she dismissed it as just thinking that this felt like the setup to a bad horror movie. They all got out of the car to examine the situation, and found that the driver's side rear tire had indeed blown, and was completely flat and a little torn in places. Jen, the third of the group, remarked that the tire looked a little odd for a blowout, which only added to my wife's feeling of unease. They had begun to discuss the best way to resolve this situation, as the position of the car had stopped in made it unclear as to whether they would be able to get it out again, even if they did manage to change the tire. And also it was unclear whether they would be able to get the jack into position to change the tire. As they were discussing this, my wife decided to phone me to let me know what happened, and they would likely be back a bit later than planned, and I shouldn't worry about them. So she dialed my number and turned away from the group as people often do when taking or making a phone call around other people. A sort of faux attempt at some privacy. Well, anyway, as she turns and takes a couple of steps away from her friends, and the phone begins to ring, she notices a silhouette standing about 200 or so meters up the road, the way they had come. This is where I come into the story. It was late, and I had been home for a couple of hours and had eaten and settled in to watch a movie when my phone started ringing. I answered, and heard nothing in response to my, "Hey honey, how was the show?" Then I heard quiet chattering and smiled, thinking I had accidentally been pocket dialed. I turned up the volume on my phone to try and pick up what was being said to tease my wife about it later. Then I froze. What I heard next made my blood run cold.
Guys. Hey guys. Seriously. Check this out. Are you seeing this?
Hissed my wife's voice.
What are you talking about? Holy shit, who the fuck is that?
Emily.
I don't like this, guys. Can we get back in the car or something and call someone?
Jen.
I think it's a man.
My wife.
What's he got in his hand?
Jen.
What was that noise?
Emily.
Sounded like a camera. I think. Is he taking pictures?
My wife.
Please, guys. Let's just get in the
Jen. Then a scream. Then I heard a thud, which I now know was the phone being dropped on the floor. Then the car door slamming. Then the scraping sound of shoes getting louder. Then quieter, as someone ran past the phone on the floor. I realized at this point I had been shouting into the phone and stopped. I was shaking. I remember grabbing my keys and jumping into my car before realizing I had no idea where they were. I put the phone that was still in my hand back to my ear and could hear nothing now. I thought back, remembering a conversation I had with my wife when I was supposed to be going on the trip with them. We had discussed the best driving route and had disagreed over which road to take, and figured my wife would take her preference over mine. What a disagreement boiled down to was whether it would be better to take the longer route on a faster road or a shorter route on the slower road. I started my car and begun to drive. This is when I realized I should probably call the police. I had adrenaline flowing and tend to be very much a jump straight into action type of person. So in hindsight, what should have been the first thing I thought to do didn't occur to me until now. I put my wife's call on hold, as I didn't want to disconnect it, and dialed the emergency services number, telling them everything I knew. Back to my wife's side of the story. Here's what happened to them while I was on the phone, making my stupid heroic leap to the rescue. My wife had seen the silhouette standing down the road and had lowered her phone, still ringing, to her side, and the conversation I had heard had ensued. They had heard a sound like an old camera making mechanical whirring of adjusting focus and click of a picture being taken. Then the silhouette had started sprinting towards them, and they had booked it into the car and locked the doors. The silhouette belonged to a man, very average looking, average height, weight, etc., but with very fierce, wild-looking eyes. The man had run, cleared the 200 or so meters in what my wife says must have been Olympic time, and instead of stopping when he reached the car, he instead vaulted onto the back of the car and run straight over it down the other side. The stranger carried on a few steps forward, then turned to face the front of the car, and smiled in what my wife described as the most blood-freezing way before raising the camera to his face, taking a picture, then running off into the woods to the side. My wife and her friend sat silent in the car for what they said felt like hours, not speaking, barely breathing. Finally, Emily spoke up, asking things like, "What the hell just happened?" and wondering what they should do next. Obviously the thing to do was call the police, which is where they had a problem, as both Emily and Jen had no reception on their phones, and my wife's phone was still on the floor outside. She told them she had signal, because she called me before spotting the silhouette, but that her phone was on the floor outside. The group fell silent and each looked at each other, weighing up the danger of going out for the phone against the danger of being stuck in the car without it for an indeterminable length of time. Quite understandably, no one volunteered to go get the phone. Finally, after a bit of squabbling, my wife said that she would get the phone, but the other two owed her big. She pulled on the door handle gently and heard the click of the locking mechanism disconnecting, then the second click of the door opening. Gingerly, my wife began pushing the door open an inch at a time. She tells me that as she was doing this, her heart was pounding and she felt sick. Suddenly, the man with the camera burst out of the tree, sprinting towards the car. My wife shut the door and hit the locking mechanism as the man ran bodily into the side of the car, rocking it on its suspension. He laughed and pointed at the girls inside in a "got you" sort of way, and began licking the windows. He began circling the car, taking pictures of the girls. He would step back, assess the scene, then take a picture, almost like a professional photographer. Every now and again, he would jump onto the car or begin licking the windows again before returning to his photography. This is the scene I arrived to. I had been driving for just under an hour, faster than I should have been, but slower than I wanted to because I didn't want to be going so fast that I missed something. My headlights lit up the car and the man dancing around it, and I came to a stop a few meters away from them. I'm a fairly big guy, 6'2" and about 195 pounds. And in my late teens, early 20s, I fought semi-professional MMA. And though I no longer compete since getting an office job, I do keep up quite a strong training regimen, so I am very fit and present quite an imposing figure. Pair the confidence this gives me with my jump into action nature, and I leapt out of the car to confront the guy, yelling at him, asking exactly what the fuck he thought he was doing. Well, this guy just turned, smiled at me, then took my picture before turning back to the car and begins taking pictures of the girls again. I lost it at this point and quickly walked up to the guy and knocked the camera out of his hands and again asked what he was doing. Up close, this guy was about 2 inches shorter than me and at least 20 pounds lighter, but seemed unfazed by this and lost no confidence with me being so close to him. He changed when I knocked the camera out of his hands. His face lost all of its amusement and he looked angry. Not in a frothing, raging way, but rather a quiet way. I herded him slowly away from the girl's car, maneuvering myself between him and them, and gesturing behind me for them to get out of the car and make their way to mine. As soon as they opened the car doors to get out, the guy tried to leap past me at them, and I had to catch him and physically restrain him from getting to them. And as I held him back, I was surprised at how strong he felt for a small man. Then he did something I didn't quite expect. He took a swing at me. By instinct from my years of MMA, I ducked his punch and drove my elbow into him in an upwards arc, just under his rib cage, pivoting off my back foot like I'd been taught, and landing a very solid blow that I felt sure must have caused some damage. Just to be sure I didn't end up in a drawn-out fight with a crazy man in the middle of nowhere who could have been armed for all I knew, I followed up with a classic Muay Thai knee to exactly the same spot my elbow had hit. A strike which I was certain would floor the guy, if not KO him. But it didn't. He didn't even go down. He just staggered back a little, straightened up, and smiled at me. This was when I began to feel frightened. I hit this guy with 2 blows which would have seriously injured a man his size, and he seemed to not feel them at all. "Kat," I said to my wife, "please get in my car and turn it around." The girls all ran to my car, which I had left running. I heard the engine rev as my wife turned the car around, but but I didn't take my eyes off the guy in front of me. He was swaying slightly on his feet in a very predatory way, eyeing me with a grin on his face. I began to back towards my car as I heard it come to a stop. Again, he followed me step for step. This is where I made my mistake. I looked behind me to see how far away my car was. I heard the scrape of boots on the road and snapped my head back just in time to see the guy almost on me. I brought my hands up to defend myself, but the guy was so fast. He barreled past me, catching me with an unbelievably powerful blow to my solar plexus, more in passing than in any attempt to actually hurt me. I've been hit hard in my life by men who knew exactly how to hit someone, and I fully believe that with the force that this guy hit me in passing, that if he had set up and thrown a punch with intent, that it would have seriously injured me. Winded, I stretched out my arm, just catching the collar of his shirt as he sprinted towards my car. I think his own speed is what saved me here, because he was running too fast to stop when I grabbed him. So I planted my feet and embraced. He nearly pulled me clean off my feet, but I held my ground and he stopped dead, his feet coming off the ground, at which point I yanked backwards as hard as I could, throwing him behind me. At this point I sprinted toward my car, not looking back to see what sort of state the guy was in. After I dove in the car, my wife hit the gas and we sped off. At which point I looked back to see the guy chasing after the car, but we were going too fast for him to be able to keep up, and he quickly fell behind and disappeared. I called the police as we drove, and was told they were searching for my wife not far away because of my earlier phone call, and agreed to meet them near the site of the incident, so we stopped and waited for the police. When they arrived, we led them to the car and they told us to stay put while they investigated. There was no sign of the guy, but they did find my wife's phone. Further up the road, a small set of spikes which must have caused the tire to blow. They told us that they had a few reports of these spikes being used to blow tires recently, but nothing about attacks or men with cameras. We all went home and arranged a tow truck for Emily's car in the morning. None of us have been quite the same since the incident, and we all now hate driving remote rural roads late at night. So crazy stranger with almost superhuman strength? Let's not meet. Number 3. This happened when I was about 14. It was around Halloween, and I had gone to a friend's party, got drunk and had to stay the night, or my mother would have been completely livid. It was already a friend she knew was a promiscuous party type, but I ended up staying with her for a few days, and we had gone across the street from her apartment to Panhandle so we could get cigarettes and some weed. We were sitting there, and people kept giving us money because we looked homeless. Sitting there in the cold with a blanket wrapped around us, we even made up this elaborate story about us being sisters running away from an abusive father. I know it was bad, but I was desperate for friends, and this girl was liked by all the people in our group, so I wanted to hang around her to be cool. Also, bad idea. So everything is going fine until this Hispanic man comes up and asks if we want hot chocolate. We politely declined because he was pretty creepy. I knew the look he had in his eye all too well, and I was pretty scared right away. Anyways, we had told him no, but he had bought it anyways, gives it to us and goes to his car. He comes back over and asks us if we want to sit in his car to warm up. We say no. He returns to his car again. About 5 minutes pass, and here is this dude again, but this time saying we can do him a favor and he'll pay us. I was staring down, blowing on my hot chocolate to cool it down, and he says to my friend that it looks like I know how to blow and he'll pay us good. We say fuck no, and he leaves. Creepy, but at least he left. The fucker comes back and says sorry. He thought we were those kinds of girls. He asks if we'd like to help him at his work, and my friend says yes. I couldn't believe it, but here we were in this guy's car on his way to his work, which was down the street at a house he was renovating. He puts us to work, wetting wallpaper and sanding stairs, and all is well for about an hour. Then he steps outside on the phone. He comes back in saying the people who own the house are on their way back and we have to go, but he promises to take us to Walmart to buy us some clothes and food. We pass Walmart and get on the freeway, and I start crying. My friend is giggling. I ask the guy where the fuck we're going, and he says Walmart. I say we pass 2 Walmarts. He ignores me. I'm really freaking out at this point. After driving around in circles for about 45 minutes, he said we're going to his buddy's house so he can make some money. I'm begging for him to stop the car and let us out. He says it'll be fun. We can give him head and let his friends fuck us, and then we can go. He even takes out a $100 bill and throws it on the back seat and says that it's a down payment. My fucking friend looks at me with a smile.
It's okay. I've done it before.
I was shocked and appalled. She started negotiating with him, and she was serious as hell. Mind you, we're still driving in circles on the freeway where they all connect and merge. I think he was trying to confuse us, because we told him the homeless story we made up and even gave him fake names and said we were from a different state. I grabbed the money off the seat and put it in my pocket. He finally pulls off the highway and I start trying to open the door, which he locks, but we get open and run like fucking hell. We ran straight to a lady and tell her everything, and she takes us back to my friend's house. We never told a soul, but we went to see Happy Feet with the money we got, and got our weed and alcohol with it. Needless to say, I stopped talking to her, and am still ashamed to say that I ever put myself in a situation like that. Thank God for the woman who took us home. So to the guy who tried to kidnap and rape us, and to the girl who was okay with it happening, let's not meet ever again. Number 4. I am a female, and this happened in 2004 when I was 14, and in my first year of high school. For a little bit of background, I only went to this high school for a first year, and due to bullying, as well as my friend that turned into a stalker, I left. Chelsea was a fairly kind, if not a little odd girl. We got along quite well, but I found out how weird and clingy she would get, always following me into bathrooms, requesting to the teachers that we would be paired together if there was a class project, and following me around in general. She even gave me a Valentine's Day card because she saw me as her best friend. She would even at times refer to me as her second mum. I was okay with all of this. Having been bullied throughout primary school, I just figured I must have been one of the first people she had made friends with. But things got worse after the accident. It was August. Australian school year goes January through to December. The school day had ended, and Chelsea and I were walking towards our usual bus stop. Now this bus stop was across a main road, but was a good 300 meters from the traffic lights. As we did every other day of the year, we ran across the main road. Except this time, I blacked out and got hit by a car. I was perfectly fine. A few bruises and a grazed elbow. Chelsea was in hysterics though, crying about how I could have died, and how glad she was that I was okay. I ended up comforting her whilst the ambulance came to check me over. This happened on a Friday, so I had the weekend to recover. Monday was when the creepy side to this story began. When I got in, Chelsea was waiting for me at my locker. I greeted her and commented that it looked like she'd had a rough night. She told me that she'd had trouble sleeping the entire weekend after seeing me get hit by a car. I understood that must have been traumatizing and said something along the lines of, "I'm sorry you had to see that. It must have been awful." She played it off as cool as she was capable of, and then told me she had something for me. She had bought me a present. I told her that was too kind, but accepted it and thanked her, as she looked like she might cry if I didn't. That probably sounds awkward and mildly mean, but I was an awkward 14-year-old with a long history of having no friends, making it hard to react appropriately to others. This was where things got worse. At recess, Chelsea was going on about the accident, with how it looked like from her end. I found this interesting because there were details you just don't get when you black out. She then turns to me, pale as a ghost, and says, "I just realized something." "What?" I asked. "If you hadn't blacked out, I would have been hit by the car. And if I'd been hit by the car, that woman wouldn't have had time to hit the brakes. So she would have hit me at full speed, and I could have died." She went silent and stared off into the distance for a while. I agreed it was a scary revelation and just said, "Well, it's lucky that I blacked out then." The rest of the week, Chelsea kept bringing me gifts, either actual store-bought presents, or drawings, or other things she'd made for me. I always thanked her, and after the second day of this, I told her to stop because she really didn't have to do this. The next week, the gifts stopped. But that seemed to be what pushed her over the edge. She started following me around more than usual, calling me to find out where I was. She even started abusing the rest of our friendship group when they would have my attention. I tried to be understanding. I tried to help her through what I assumed was a breakdown of sorts. But I drew the line when she assaulted my close friend I had from primary school. I wasn't there for this, but Melissa told me that she was walking home from the shops one day when a larger dark-skinned girl came up to her, screaming at her to keep away from her girlfriend, and accused her of being a homewrecker. When Melissa tried to ask what she was on about, Chelsea started to physically assault her, screaming to keep away from me. I knew from the description it was her. Worried, I contacted Chelsea's mother to let her know what was going on. Unfortunately, her mother more or less has her head up her ass because she said that there was nothing wrong with her little angel, and I must have her confused with someone else. Scared shitless, I decided to confront Chelsea at school. This didn't go in any of the directions I had considered. I thought she would scream, attack, lie, or threaten suicide like she had in the past. But instead she came clean. This part I remember clearly. She was as calm as Hannibal in Silence of the Lambs. Me. "Chels, why did you beat up my friend? If there is something going on, tell me, I can help you." Chelsea. "She was getting between us. Don't you understand? I love you, and she was going to break your heart. I should have killed her, but there were too many people around. Don't you get it? You saved me, so now I'm going to save you from everyone else." I felt pure fear. My stomach dropped and I went cold. I told her to keep away from me and my friends and to never talk to me again. After this, I reported what I knew to a teacher and spoke to my other friends, warning them of what Chelsea had done. A few people told me that I was being harsh on Chelsea, but I was honestly terrified of her and what she was capable of. My mother, however, told me I had done the right thing and told me not to feel guilty about it at all. Letters starting arriving in the mail, with no stamp. All from Chelsea. Some were photos of me out on the weekend, but most of them were love letters with the threat of suicide chucked in. I handed these in to the police, even though they said they couldn't do anything at this time as there was no real threat. It was a good idea to keep a paper trail just in case. Just before December, 2 of my friends stole Chelsea's diary. I scolded them for this. Just because Chelsea was going crazy on us didn't give us the right to steal from her. But in hindsight, I am now glad they did. The diary was full of our names in hearts, poems about me, drawings of me, anywhere from just me to me dead, or us doing something sexual, and basic thoughts and feelings about how she felt and what she wanted to do. I felt the blood drain from my face when they showed me the last few entries. All of them were her planning to kill me, and how to dispose of the evidence. Some of the details were enough to literally make me throw up. Thankfully, all three of us were huddled in the bathroom. I am not going to go into details, because they still honestly scare me. I have seen and gone through some awful things, but a lot of it pales into comparison to some of the things that she wrote. The other girls just wanted to put it back and quietly act like they never saw it. But I told them we were handing this in to the coordinator of our year level. This is what they needed to take action. Chelsea was taken in for question and was provided psychiatric help. The next year, I changed schools and I changed my number. I haven't heard from Chelsea since. I have, however, heard from my old friends, and they have told me that she never got better and started taking it out on them instead. They got away from her after she dropped out of high school in year 11. So Chelsea, I hope you get the help you really need. But let's not meet again. Hey guys, Flamingo Creeper here. Thank you for checking out my video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. I do post a new video every Monday, but if you are impatient, I do have older videos you can check out if you haven't seen them already. I am considering in the near future releasing a set of videos that aren't on the track of true creepy stories, but fictional creepy stories, or creepypastas if you will. Let me know what you think of that idea in the comments section below. Also, fun guessing game for you all. One of those stories were mine. Put in the comments section below which one you think it was and I'll let you know if you got it right. I would also like to thank the Reddit users who gave me their permission to share their stories with you. The links to the original stories are in the description below. If you want to send me creepy stories to read to this beautiful creepy community, you can either email them to me or message me over Facebook. Details for both are in the description. Just be sure to include a brief statement saying I do have your permission. If you haven't already, go like my Facebook page, as I do post daily about various creepy things ranging from urban legends to serial killers. You'll also get the first heads up to when a new video is out. As always, my creepers, be safe. And remember, the monster isn't under your bed. It's in the street.